Hello to another episode of our Industry Explorers Start Your Career in series. Today is a part 2 because we are taking a deeper dive into production rigging. And I have a recurring guest with me, Brent Armstrong with Alpine Rigging. How are you doing today, Brent?
Hey, I'm great, Siobhan. Thanks for having me.
I love working with you in real life, and I'm so excited that you've agreed to come onto this show again to talk a little bit more about some of the essential skills for production riggers. And for our audience, welcome back, you guys. Here are the topics that we're going over for today. We've got pre-production skills, installation technical skills, complex problem solving, and safety considerations. We're going to go through all these topics. Feel free to send your questions as we go. If we get more people who join us towards the end, we will definitely do a Q&A. But feel free to share the link with your friends. Let them know that we're live right now. Send in your questions. And without further ado, Brent, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what Alpine Rigging is all about?
Yeah, copy that. Thanks. My name's Brent Armstrong. I am the founder of Alpine Rigging, which is a small entertainment rigging shop based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm the kid that started being a local rigger, worked up to being the local lead, learned how to draw, and slowly transitioned past local labor into the production world. Slowly transitioned past just doing gigs on my own to needing a team of folks, slowly becoming a business, and enjoying that path, enjoying that journey, hiring people, doing things, trying to think less like a rigger and more like a business owner is kind of where we're at.
I think that's a really unique set of skills that you have to use every day is you're blending the rigging mindset with the business owner mindset. Just what's that like?
Wow.
Is there much crossover between the two?
Yeah, somewhat. You want to be direct and linear. And see, the thing about being a rigger is that's kind of I don't know, you get some management and stuff in there, but that's really a trade to be the head rigger or anything or project manager. But the proper crossover is team building. Whether you're building your office team, your business team, or your rig squad, that team, the ability to pull people together and form Voltron and accomplish great things is that's probably the most proper crossover. Otherwise, it's a little different, right? You're trying to think strategically versus thinking like a tactician or a tradesman. That's a big challenge for me because I love being tactical and I love showing up on gigs at these points. A pretty comfortable place for me to arrive on site. Trying to keep the soul running strong and not dilute as we become a company. Have a new gentleman starting tomorrow. Pick him up at the airport tomorrow night. 2 weeks in Vegas to train.
Congratulations.
Well,
congratulations
thank you.
to that gentleman. And, congratulations for making it through COVID. That sounds silly to say, but, it was a struggle for a lot of small businesses. And I'm happy that you're in a position where you hired a new person and you're ready to take on some more shows this year. So let's talk about what it takes for the pre-production stage of a show. Who is your client? Is it the technical director or is it the talent? When do you get the call for a contract? Take us from there.
Yeah, totally. The first point of contact for new business, or not even new business, but we'll just talk in generalities and commonalities. It's usually like a tech producer, technical director, production manager, someone like that. I get the call quicker these days than we did in the beginning to bias it towards the front end of the production journey. Usually, end user hires their technical coordinator, the TD, the tech producer. They get a rendering or design from the designer, either a creative designer or a production designer. Depending on the depth of your relationship, I'll get the call pretty quickly after that because a good tech producer or TD will have a couple viability questions right out of the gate. Will this fit in the proposed space? A 9-foot tall ballroom or a stadium, all different stuff, but they'll get the rendering in front of your eyes pretty quickly. Hey, what do you think? Just what are your notes? That's one way that gets you upstream. That would be optimal. I think that means you have a good rapport, good vibe going with the tech producer, TD producer sort of person. Otherwise, the creative design they'll find a lighting designer first, get a lighting design. He'll concurrently be tapping audio to just kind of ramp up the whole design logistical show process. And at some point there, the worse your relationship is with that hiring person, the TD or whatever, the later in the game you get that. Like they might have all the other departments together. In a horrible thing, that'd be a week out, right? You get it late. But sorry, go ahead, Siobhan.
Oh, we've got a question. A fantastic question. How do you find clients? Are they people that you've worked with in the past? I would love to know if for clients whom you haven't worked in the past with, wow, that was grammatically incorrect. Please excuse my grammar. How do you find those new clients when you don't have an established rapport with them?
Yeah, that's the $1 trillion question. Thanks for the question, Bill. My honest answer, I just had a coach, went through business coaching for 6 months, trying to expand on this concept. My honest answer is you just are who you are and you act with genuineness and integrity, and over the long haul, good things happen, right? There's not a convention. You can't go, I mean, maybe I could go to Polestar or something like that and bebop around, hand out cards, troll at the bar to try to make connections. It's just like rock climbing. I used to rock climb a lot back in the day, and you'd put like your little note up on the bulletin board. That was the lowest common denominator because you never knew what you were getting. It was really potluck. So, I mean, for us to advertise LinkedIn, Insta, I don't even know where you would push content. You're getting strangers. You don't know if you vibe with strangers, but during the course of your workday, whatever level you're rigging at, if you're just competent, honest, cool. I mean, cool, getting along with people to a degree is you can't be a pushover, but definitely being a part of the mix, the vibe of the camp you're in. Being real and being yourself and doing a good job. And I've always hoped that the people I'm working with and surrounded with will preach the gospel of Alpine. Call those people, they hook it up. I don't know a cheat or a hack.
When you talk about vibing with someone, is that does that implement the skills it required to read the room and read somebody's personality and kind of ebb and flow with them? Do you find yourself changing the way you may deliver information based on someone's personality?
Somewhat, yeah, totally, definitely.
Because I'm definitely trying to dissect the word vibe when you're in this.
Yeah, no. That's super. It's not be fake or anything, but some people that hire you are more alpha and dominant. I'm working with one of the better tech producers I work, and the dude's a ton of bricks. By the time any information's presented to me, it's been vet and thought through. And when you get information from someone like that, you stop and you reread their email 3 times, and you think they are communicating the pertinent info to me, and you roll or you ramp up in a different way than maybe a newer, younger client that needs a lot more help, that just doesn't. The information and who I am and like my personality doesn't change, but definitely whether you lead the dance or kind of follow the dance, the customer's always right until it gets to safety or some kind of health matter, something like that. Yeah. Just kind of, you have different roles in different teams. Some of it you lead and are kind of the shepherd of the LD and audio and stuff. Some your client has already done that. So that's what I mean, kind of vibe. Again, right. There's also I think birds of a feather flock together. So the camp you're in, it's just like high school lunch. All the like heavy metal dudes sit at that table. All of the super smarties sit over at that table. So you'll kind of find yourself clumping. In the beginning, you're just saying yes to any work that comes. You don't have discipline and you can't be selective. So you'll see how that works out. You'll catch a couple good ones and you'll catch one that's not a real love connection.
So speaking of pushing out advertisements and ad content, guys, see the ticker below. Check out alpinerigging.com. Do you have someone who needs rigging services? Brent is based in Las Vegas. Oh, wait, sorry, my camera's backwards. Brent is based in Las Vegas, does a ton of work. Check out his website if you think you or someone that you know needs his rigging services.
Yeah. Thanks for the shout out, Siobhan. That's super cool. Love your ticker.
I have
Nice
to.
and
I
moving.
have to. I do it for all my guests. I do it for
I
all
get
my
to
guests. I
zoom
love
in. You
having
got
your
like
ticker down
someone on a
here.
layback with the helmet on. You got some chain links. That's awesome.
And I got to put my little shtick in here just real quick, guys. If you like what you see, you can go to ko-fi.com/industry explorers and buy me a coffee, and it helps me with my operational costs. So going back to the pre-production skills. So you've got your client, you got the contract, and you mentioned working with the LD. So you're working with the other heads of departments because they're telling you like where everything needs to hang, and then it's up to you to safely distribute those forces. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You're the waiter or the server, right? You don't add anything because creatively you think there's some negative space over there and some trust would fill. Hey, that's not the jam, right? All the other fancy people make those creative sort of decisions, and I get the order. I go back in the kitchen, I cook it up, I bring them their plate or their design for everybody's review. Might have some questions. You can get in there. Hey, if we move 17 inches left, this happens or doesn't happen. Where does that rank in the priority level? Is rigging pretty, or is rigging the ugly duckling on this one? Stuff like that.
So it's kind of like playing with a set of blocks, if you will, and you're trying to see which stack is going to look the best and accomplish exactly what all of the departments want to accomplish. And in the real world, sometimes you have to make sacrifices. So when it comes to making those sacrifices, such as, oh, what's going to happen if we move 17 inches this way or that way? How do you approach those conversations? And what kind of tools do you use to come up with various solutions?
How do you approach those conversations? Again, with any sort of familiarity, you can just it's kind of a standard dialogue, right? The people that are hiring us know the cadence and the questions that they should be hearing, right? They know if you're like, they don't know, but they have like an expectation of the conversation. So when the rigger says, hey, I got into these drawings and I overlaid everybody and audio is 4.5 inches stage left, I'm assuming that's a misclicked and not direct. They're like, yeah, okay, rigger, you're 4.5 inches, everything's centered. Cool. So some of that is sort of part and parcel for what we do in easy. So if it's audio, maybe hit audio on the side, person to person, regardless of your relationship, just one-on-one instead of putting everybody on a reply all blast. That's a really nice way to tiptoe in it, get you some rapport, and just gets the vibe going with that person one-on-one, that department, or what have you. And again, it's not the first time the riggers ask them if they can move to a dead hang or whatever we're asking, right? Unless they themselves are brand new, but they're fairly common questions that come out of us. I hope, I can't speak for everybody, but I would assume the discussion with the rigger is it's not the first time we're hearing it.
I'm going to throw a Jockoism at you. Prioritize and execute.
Yeah, totally. OODA, observe, orient, decide, act. I'm trying to think. So I don't know where we're at in the thing, or if I'm skipping. So you got all the departments. You're looking at the drawing now, and now you're just using go ahead.
Here's a great question, real quick. Does one department have a bigger say in the design process?
Oh, absolutely. Every department is the prom queen.
Every department is the prom queen. You guys are going to start calling each other prom queens.
Yeah, no, I just mean everybody's credit
on job sites now.
Does one department have a bigger say? I would say scenic is really the immovable thing. You've got to have the scenic design.
You think video, maybe?
Video is another department that's pretty much just a waiter, right? They might be doing some original thought design for how to implement their odd wall if it breaks or anything, but they're just getting told we want a 40 by 80 LED wall, or we want 13 5-foot wide walls, right? And they're doing a thing. Who's controlling the location of their assets is the production designer, really. So I'm going to stick to Scenic has the biggest stake in the design process and the anchor on the whole thing. It's all important, not video, right? Just one department, not video, Bill. Scenic. That's my answer. If I get to stick with an answer, scenic.
So when you give this answer, are you speaking in the context of any arena style show? Are you speaking in the context of trade shows or the corporate ballroom events?
Man, this may be the only answer I can give that's universal, scenic, right? Like in an expo situation, you're getting a drawing from the exhibit house most commonly,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like in stone. There's no moving the booth line 7 inches, right? Because it's overlaid with 75 other booths, stuff like that. Expos are probably the type style of gig where you can make the fewest requests, right? Especially scenically, right? It's all fitting in that thing, and then you'll get into a world where they don't really, expos. Not a lot of dialogue there compared to some other things.
I love the context to this question, actually, because you're right. It absolutely matters because you're going to have less flexibility when it comes to those trade shows because you're overlaid with a bunch of other vendors. That makes total sense. Versus,
or even just the use, even if it was just one booth, though. Sorry, Siobhan. Sorry to interrupt. Even if it was just one booth, they've already done the thinking, and they don't. I can't. I'm trying to think of they would want to have to hang like the £1 million LED wall, and there's one beam. And if your £1 million LED, I'm using exaggerated terms, wants to hang on this show in this building, you're going to put it under this one beam, or you're going to put it here. And it would have to be something so egregious like that to try to get them to bend to the Dow.
I mean, I can think of like the auto shows where they're actually hanging cars sometimes. I imagine that those expo shows get pretty darn heavy.
Yeah, man. Sure. Everybody always thinks about the £1 million LED wall, right? It could be a 1,000-pound LED wall in a 200-pound room. I mean, I think the convention center in Philadelphia is like 250-pound point. So heavy can be relative to the superstructure or the roof, not in absolute terms like the £1 million LED wall. Let's get away from trade shows unless we want to stick there, though.
Yeah. When you are speaking with all the other departments and given, people who are in these positions, they are experienced, they are familiar with these types of interactions where it's this problem solving process that you guys are going through. They're kind of used to this. How do you avoid miscommunication? Especially when it comes to a brand new install. Maybe it's not a trade show. Maybe it's something completely new, maybe a less experienced production team. How do you avoid miscommunication?
Wow. This is something I've worked hard on over the years because when I started out, everything was a 2-page email with like the entirety of my thoughts and methodology. I was, nervous that people might discount your thoughts or things like that. Over the years, I've noticed that people, especially when it's cranked and busy, people just don't have time for that. They're not going to client people. Sometimes you only get a single phone screen of comprehension before they just white out. So condensing my message, I still work on this. I mean, I have lists right now to condense my message now, so that when you hit them for that first kind of email, hey, how's it going? This is who I am. This is what we're doing. This is where we are in the process. And if you could hit them with like a really nice, concise list of bullet point questions that time on that first transmission, that really helps because you've simplified and reduced the amount of communication. It's easy online and everything. It's easy for sarcasm or humor or just your tone and inclination to get crossed up. Phones help bridge that gap past digital. But to answer your question, I think it's to reduce down your thoughts and be concise and clear, so that the message is as short as possible.
I like that. Concise, clear, short message, get to the point. As a people-pleasing millennial or Gen Z, depending on who you ask, I often think, man, I hope I'm not bothering this person. Man, I hope I'm not being excessive with my emails. Do you ever get to a point, as a non-people-pleasing millennial like myself, do those thoughts ever cross your mind? Like, am I emailing someone too much? Am I being overbearing, trying to get clarification?
Oh man, no, that's like an every hour challenge. Sure, the email you send bricks. You send it to 4 people and not a single person responds. That's like 12 times a day. And you're like, okay. I always call it getting Excalibur out of the stone, right? You're pulling on the sword, nothing happens. And just like one time it comes out effortlessly. I'm always trying to study that movement. What was it that helped get Excalibur out of the stone? Yeah, all the time. I mean, you'll even put that in there. Hey, I'm sorry if I'm bothersome to you. If you really so I have some people where they're just so busy, bigger clients that are cranking. In those kind of communications, it switches to, this is what I'm doing. This is the information I received. This is my analysis. And again, these are short emails, sometimes sentences, if I can get it down. This is the email I'm working, or the information I'm working with. This is how I've analyzed it. This is my course of action. I'm already doing this. And then in all caps, please say no to stop me. So all they have to do is respond no. They know what you're doing. They know why you're doing it. And then you're on. You're on. That kind of changes. I don't know if I would do that with a brand new client or friend. But if it was necessary, I would, if something was time sensitive. But it becomes that, this is my course of action. Say no, stop me. Because that's easier and quicker for them than, to refute your analysis point by point.
That's an intriguing method, is to it's almost like you're in this gray area of not quite begging for forgiveness, because you are doing the thing. You're just asking someone to reply with no if they need you to take a different course of action, but you're not quite begging for forgiveness. But it's a really interesting approach when it comes to something that's time sensitive. Thank you for sharing that method with us. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking of automated messages, like maybe using a Slack bot, or a Slack bot with Google Forms, something to where I have my question, and if it doesn't get answered in a very simple format, it resends the email. And as that list builds up, the bot is sending the next email, and it's like, okay, fill out the form or answer my questions. When it comes to working with people or trying to get answers out of people, like you said, concise and being to the point is essential, because these people that you're working with they've got full-time jobs, and they may be juggling multiple.
Don't get the wrong impressions. The questions we're asking, if you're being concise and well thought out, this is the information you need to move. We're not talking for sport. This isn't a hobby. This is business and work, right? And the transmissions. You have to get really good at making intelligent approximations for the weights of just for a variety of things, right?
Intelligent approximations. Copyright that. I'm Brent Armstrong with Alpine Rigging, and we make intelligent approximations.
That's like, I've seen like that t-shirt, right? Like precision guesswork with shady information developed by people that barely know. It is like that a lot, though. There's a balance. So you're doing this concise, I send you one email a week executive summary thing. Sometimes you even have to, right? I don't think it's passive aggressive-y, but we're always like in this day and age just trying to be so tiptoey, like sorry to bug you again. Or, certain vendors where you've been banging on it, like you're talking about the Slack bot. That might I don't know, that might work for some people, but you can, once you're comfortable in yourself enough, it's really common to write the fourth follow-up email with a different tone. Like, hey, let's just pick on somebody now. Hey, Mr. Wall Builder, I know you don't know the weight of the wall, but I'm sorry to be bothersome, but I need to keep following up on this to finish out my due diligence for this area or something. So admit that you know why the information's outstanding, that there's probably no answer. Make a little joke about being ignored so much, but be like, this is my job too, and this is what. And then there's the obvious CC the boss when that doesn't work. That's always that's an escalation. Just know what things are an escalation. You're at work, these are answers. Somebody has hired you to get these answers and do this work. So while you may be everybody's bothersome to someone, right? Like if you've never, if certain vendors never worked with a rigger before. That's just bothersome right out of the gate because there's this additional amount of questions.
Mm-hmm. And
But
this
the quicker you can coach those people, the sooner you have a good client or a good teammate, right? To let them know it all comes from a good place.
Right. Your escalation tactics make perfect sense, and I think that's really great advice for our audience to follow. We've talked a lot about communication cross departmentally. Let's talk about the the computer. What does CAD stand for? Brent, help me.
Computer assisted design, I think. Yeah.
There you go. Computer assisted design. My head is all in automation right now. So when it comes to CAD skills,
no, yeah.
When it comes to your CAD skills to streamline your process,
mileage. That's so hard. So I would think getting like your chops at CAD. I mean, I've taught at this point. I don't know if it's 25 riggers or 150 riggers, giving them the Kool-Aid and spiel on how we ramp up and how we learn how to do our CAD work. I'm glad to sit with people, as many as you have to. It's a numbers game, right? I don't know what percentage really catch on. It's very, very difficult. My answer was mileage as to how you enhance your workflow, because you just have to do drawings and go through the whole process to learn what the process is, and then to be able to identify the efficiencies and stuff. When I very first started, I got one lesson from, the older production rigger kind of guy. This is how you set it up. This is how you turn it home. I went home and I drew the door and the wall in front of me. I got a little circle for the doorknob. Then in kind of an ISO perspective, I drew the entertainment center, a big cube with extruded cubes through it, my TV on the top, just to learn the buttons in the interface, right? You needed kind of some wax on, wax off, just to learn how to draw a line, how to delete something, how to negate a command. I got just further than that, and I think somebody gave me the symbols, and then you're just link and logging. It's repetition, but the really hard part is it's kind of boring. You think it'll be exciting in the beginning, but it'll be boring because the drafting process is usually hours at a time, especially in the beginning when you're not real fast. Sorry. And it gets tedious, right? You get the venue, you overlay all the drawings. That's pretty cool. You get the truss down. But then as you keep going to insert the power and control, to design the power and control and label the hoist, then to do the loads and the dimension, that's pretty tedious. And I don't know many people, myself included in the beginning, that my knife was probably sharper than most, but the knife gets dull after you're just practicing. You really need to have touched operational proficiency, to where you can do something. Then it scales back. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back, 6 steps forward, 4 steps back. Then you need someone to get you a drawing with a deadline, because it's not until the deadline comes that you start to be crisp and force yourself to train a little longer. You need the deadline after a second. I haven't met anybody. I've never met a man or woman to be like, here's that practice drawing, and what's next? I want to get it to 100, because it just gets so boring. You want to overlay the venue. You want to put some truss in there. You want to put the hoist, and then you want to start thinking about brightness if you're in an arena or something like that. You don't want to measure all the legs of the 50 amp going from the wall to the motor controller or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Here's here's a great segue into the installation tech skills. I would love for you to describe the process of when you are doing the CAD drawings into loading into the building, specifically when you need load cells, right? Because when you're doing your drawings, you're doing a little bit of load distribution calculations, but then once you get from the computer to real life, those things can change. So what's that process like, and where does your mind go? What are some of the questions and considerations that go on when you go from point A to point B like that?
I heard, when do you include load cells or live load management in the process?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other one, Siobhan? When you're done with the drawing, you're now going to load in. What was, just go ahead.
Right. So just like when you're doing the drawing, you're thinking about load distribution as well as motor placement, labeling everything and cabling. But then when you take that to reality, what happens when you apply your load cells and everything completely changes and you realize something's heavier than you anticipated, or it's heavier on one side more so than the other, just depending. It all depends. I realize there's so many variables when it comes to putting these productions
Why
together.
include load cells? Thinking about live load management, and then how do you audible on site when something's different? Those are the two
Yeah.
pieces of that, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Load cells and live load management. I'm a huge proponent of load cells and live load management. I mean, think about in life from a very early age, we learn not to bend at your back, to squat at your knees, to lift up. The other piece of data in our human algorithm is how much does this item I'm about to lift up weigh? We all know if this is heavy or light, or have a guess, right? An approximation. When we're handing something to someone, this one's heavy, right? There's always an approximation before we lift. I think a huge part of your due diligence is your load study and your load study, how you do that, your method for that, your worksheets and whatnot. You get pretty close. So yes, Thorsten, I see your question. Load cells. I was Brent the rigger for maybe a year before I was like, wow, this is hairy. You don't want to lose your house, blah, 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 all those business things. We became a business. We incorporated. The first nickels I had to rub together, I bought load cells. Absolutely the first thing I ever bought. What are they? Ilon load cells, the yellow ones that were wireless. Kish Rigging was using those at the time. I came out of the Kish camp. I bought 8 of those. This is before we had t-shirts or anything. We bought load cells. It never made sense to me from my perspective when I broke into this that we didn't know what things weighed. And that was, 15 or 20 years ago. Load cells had been around since the 80s or longer. We just don't use them. It's a tragedy that we don't take live load monitoring, or even in the shop, right? Send 3 load cells in the shop, pick the scenic piece up with a forklift, right? And get some data. Live load, it's critical. I think in the years to come, it will be more and more. So now I don't own. Then I met a fellow named David Bond who had a load cell company. That's all he sold at the time. What was it? What was his company? Oh, had a catchy name. I'm forgetting it. He's now the COO of Kinesis North America. Oh, I'm bummed I can't remember the name of his company. It was catchy and to do with. So he was a distributor for Broadway. That's the more common wireless load cell I see in the world these days. Shackle pin style, no headroom loss. I was so impressed with David Bond and so compelled by the Broadway product that I switched. And at that time, that was a Herculean switch to now have 2 types of load cells, right? We only have 16 load cells, but you have 8 and 8. That was a big deal, but the product was just slightly more efficient. Anyway, we now own a couple hundred Broadway load cells. I mention this in case you want to rent some. But also because we own them in-house, it has, totally, Bill, should be, and I hope it continues to snowball to become a bigger part of the package. Kish Rigging, Cassidy Rig, I know are big load cell proponents. I would include myself in that. But we all have a different philosophy and ethos about where and how. To get to Siobhan's question about when do you include them, it's pretty typical on any outdoor structure. You got the anemometer. Any indeterminate structure is a good cell there. Again, so any sort of mother grid, any place you could be heavy, there's lots of reasons. I'm pretty quick to include them. LED walls, because we own so many, and regardless of if we're able to initially capture the billing, you can include them on the service delivery, because I believe they're that important. And there's nothing that adds resolve to your voice to your client saying, well, I'm not paying for that. We drove fine without seatbelts. I don't need a seatbelt. Then say, I believe in this so much, they're going to be there. You don't. It's only a question once. You get on that job site, you get the computer set up, everything's kind of tidy. You're loading in the LED wall. Hey, super client, come check this out. This is pretty cool. You've got it all pretty with the gig plot on there. This guy's a badass client. He's run around. He knows everything. He's been everywhere. Hey, bro, here's your LED wall, £1,000,000. We're trying to be careful here. Let's watch this guy over here just bump one hoist. Hey, Fred, the ground rigger. Bump number 7, smallest bump you can give it. Bink. He gets to see that load transfer on there, and you never have the chat again. He's like, wow, that's what's going on. You're like, wow, that's what's going on. Now bump 2 of them, and you see the load distribution, and just it's like water on a slide or a teeter-totter or something. You just see the force redistribute, and they're amazed. A lot of people are just taken aback. And then you drill into it, what kind of problems that can create technically, liability-wise, exposure. So in my head, I've got these standard assets that you're going to put load cells now, because we have so many in hoist and we run that fleet of them. I can put them on a whole bay, right? If the bay's concentrated loading, or 2 bays, 3 bays, I mean, I think the most we put in the air at a time is 130. That's 2 laptops worth, right? It's illuminating, no pun, what you see with that. You brought up some stage left, stage right things. One thing before we jump to the next question, though, this is the only time your load study receives honest feedback, right? We do all our load calculations and loads. You never know if your homework's right or wrong from one to the next. You start putting load cells on that, you start to get feedback onto your process. It's pretty standard for us to be within 2 to 7% from our estimate, from our load study to real world loads. That's nice to know. You never know those things. This is should be a topic we talk about more in the industry, is the feedback you get on your estimations via load cells, if you care to look. That's a magnificent tool.
Did you say that you had up to 130 load cells on a show once?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Wow. That's 2 laptops worth. Incredible.
Totally.
Is there ever a time where you don't use load cells, where you find it's not necessary?
Oh, that's commonplace. I hate to be Mr. Load Cell advocate and then say no. Sure, a two support truss, 2 hoist truss with a banner on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, there's lots of that work that goes on in our world. I'm not.
Maybe this is a better question. The buildings that we're in, they're rated to withstand a certain amount of force depending on how you're using those forces. At what percentage are you, like, say you're creeping towards that maximum building limit? How close do you need to be to that limit to where you go, we need load cells, definitely, because we need to make sure we don't get too close within this limit? Does that question make sense? I hope I phrased
100%.
it.
Nope. Totally lucid. I'm just
God.
trying to be concise with my answers. The 2-cent answer is about 75% of the capacity of any component in your system. That could be the truss span.
Of any
that
component.
The truss span, the chain hoist, right? Because you're not just worried about overloading the roof, right? You could overload the hoist, a heavy half ton, a heavy quarter ton. Overload, like wow. I want to back. It could be a truss span if that was the component. But I mean, use a bigger truss, right? You don't want to have gear fear, but I don't really like to push things unless you have to, right? Step up to a higher grade, something or other.
Well, and it doesn't have to be the most grand rig in the world, right? I remember being on a job. It was just a ballroom, and it was a stick of truss, possibly a stick and then 2 other sticks, and they were connected. 8 motors maybe across, holding up it's a ballroom. So it was a pretty short video wall, but we were getting close to the building capacity because the building capacity just wasn't a whole lot. Some of these maybe 200-pound rubs, right? It just depends 100%. On what you're working with. So
you put it on both sides of the spreader truss, right? Or something to see it. Yeah, no. You can, once you get into that world and thinking about how you can use it, one thing, my look to the future of load cells is they are completely if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to see it, does it make a sound? The answer is no. If no one's looking at the load cell rack, that data is worthless. right? You can record it, you could review it at night, you could, but I mean, my most common workflow usage with load cells when I broke in was like flying gags or whatnot, rock and roll sort of situations. You would load in, everything's up, everything's at trim, then the riggers go upstage to the load cell rack and you kind of load level the fly gag before you load it for the day. You know what your number should be. That was one usage. That's different than the indeterminate structure or the LED wall and stuff. We now, like when you have 130 load cells in the air, Siobhan, that's a lot of pieces to lose. The stuff's expensive. That's like 2 load cell techs. Now try to sell someone a load cell tech. No, this person's just going to sit at that desk and watch load cells all day and yell, "Hey, Brent!" when or whatever your communication strategy is and protocol for that gig. But someone's got to be watching, or peak force moments happen all the time. And that's really a new thing. That's what I'm trying to advocate into the future, is not just having them, but having someone watch them.
Absolutely.
That's the second trick to the story.
So here, you use the if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's around to hear it, did it make a sound? Could we? Is it too soon for this joke? Could we say if there's a rig in the arena at the Mandalay Bay and everybody goes to lunch and the rig falls, did it make a sound?
I thought they were loading out. No, it's not too soon. Yeah, any of those things, they make a sound. Let me tell you, metal hitting concrete makes a sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just that point. It's not enough. Like a lot of people have the heavy LED wall. They load the LED in, and then they go look at the thing. Oh, all the numbers are under, or we get it load level at that point, and they think that's the total service delivery or the use case of a load cell. And I'm just throwing it out to the world that there's significantly more value to help you manage the safe install process if someone is watching them. And it doesn't have to be a special load cell tech. I mean, I do plenty of gigs that are 40 hoists and 4 load cells, right? And I've got the laptop on a road case while we're raising the LED wall or something. But the ability to live load monitor adds value to the whole process.
You need someone with integrity who is going to notify you when you're exceeding whatever limits you set for that gig.
100%.
Bill asked a question. Have you used the CM hoist with internal load cells?
Bill's got all the good questions. Bill, no, I haven't. I've heard about this. Again, as a production guy, I'm sure it's great, right? CM makes a great hoist. I think it's Motion Labs is making their load cell via stage rigging. I've seen those Motion Lab load cells in use. Their user interface, it's pretty tight. And I've seen Motion Labs that aren't the old school long ones, right, that are now Shackleton style with the cable. Internal, having not run with them on projects or used them over time or seen them on a fixed install, I understand why we would be doing that. My thought with that is I watch stagehands put hoists in case all day long, right? And it's kind of, it can be nice, get it in there first try, or it can be like you're kicking a dog, right? The thing hits the ground and then the thing tips over and this and that. And a load cell's a pretty precision item, right? That I don't know over time, like if you were touring 8 of them for 2 years, what would happen with just the load in, load out, getting dropped, getting pinged. No, they're probably pretty cool, right? Definitely save some time, one less piece to have to manage on site. But no, I haven't. I used to own some Apex hoists that had internal load cells. The Apex hoist had 2 and they had 3. But again, those were already expensive and we were already super careful putting them in and out of the boxes. That would be my only thought.
Ryan says, had a show once that was reaching building capacity. We got a freak blizzard winter storm that dropped 3 feet overnight. We had to clear the roof of snow to hang the full rig. And you know what? What a great segue into outdoor rigging considerations. I don't know if this show necessarily was outdoors or not, but weather plays a huge factor into what we do, right? So you mentioned anemometers earlier, which measure wind speed. I don't even know what question I want to ask. I just want you to start talking about weather and rigging.
Hey, Ryan, that's actually a pretty common thing, right? So there's some snow load baked in there. The engineer or whoever came up with that criteria has thought about that. I just got back from Iceland We were 2 weeks later into the calendar where the roof capacity doubled. They held back half of their allowable live load for the winter because go Iceland, they get a lot of snow. Also on engineering reports and in the notes and the fine print, you see call outs for pooling water, standing or pooling water. I have a friend that used to be the head rigger at the Sands Convention Center. He would have to send the boys up. And again, everything can be a challenger in communication. It's not easy when you're in a situation like that to call the entity that sweeps the standing or pooling water off the roof because it's not you. You don't control that as like an in-house AV provider, right? That's building maintenance. So you got to, take the little screenshot of the engineering thing and Durga. Can we please get someone to help us manage this? Yeah, the snow for live load, dead load, that sort of stuff. Always a freaky condition. Anywhere you go, there's something, and you need to abide by the house rules. Believe the scientists, believe the engineers. Wind considerations. I took the ESA extreme weather class at the University of Oklahoma. Or was it Oklahoma State? I think it was OSU, probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer than that, maybe 8 years ago. We didn't do a huge amount of outdoor gigs, still don't, but I went to that just for enrichment, and it was one of the most valuable 3 days I've ever spent learning about outdoor weather considerations. I would recommend that so much. I think it's virtual or online now, and it's only like $25. Take it, listen to that. It's things you've never thought about. Here at Alpine, every outdoor structure, even if it's a 4-post sunshade, gets an engineer's review. We, over the course of time, you learn to think about the things and approximate ballast and whatnot. But we're not there. My mind is not there with omnidirectional forces and all of this and seismic variance based on your location. Anything outside, we get an engineer's eyes on. That's non-negotiable. And then you need to. It's really a challenge. You go to the engineer, you get the update, you get the wind trigger chart, the wind management plan. This is what happens. Now you need to take that
from the engineer.
Yeah, the structural engineer is the gotcha. One that generates those for us. Then you need to take that back to production and get everybody to buy in, right? I'm sure if there's local working riggers here, they've all been on the gig where the wind kicks up and nobody's thinking about it. Or we heard we were going to fly the audio up or down, but we never practiced. Super common on like an outdoor festival. Let's say the audio delays that are way out in the house. Wind gets to whatever, pick 30, 40, 50, whatever, wherever you are in your trigger chart. Time to fly the audio down on the 90-foot towers, but there's no motor controller. We didn't bring enough motor controllers. That's on the B stage. So then you've got to take that information back to your camp and work that into the mix, and hopefully you have some production support and some traction with that to, best to get that information in the pipeline as far out as possible before everybody's in like stressful install conditions.
That's a really important factor to consider, especially if you're a rigger and you're used to mostly indoor shows. And I'm thinking with the expos, a lot of times you get in your scissor lift or you're in your boom lift. It's nice and easy. You just coil the cables, put them on top of the truss. You forget about it when you're at trim, right? But for an outdoor show, like you said, if you're expecting windy situations and you're going to possibly expect to fly the audio delays back down, you're not going to want to make the cables inaccessible. You're going to want to be able to deploy that motor control right when that happens and take care of your, I'll call it an emergency protocol or your high wind action plan protocol. It's a really important thing to consider if you're not used to working outdoors.
For sure. That's absolutely. And it's a little sticky. You were asking about working with people and changing your delivery. You get the management plan. You really have to backfeed that. If you show up with that on day 6 of the install, now it's just more ticky-tack kind of Charlie Brown stuff from the rigger. You really need to get that. I mean, maybe it doesn't show up till day 6 or something, but as soon as you get your hands on that, you're doing yourself solid to start gaining allies. Not allies, everybody should be on the side of safety, right? But there's you start to touch money, more motor controllers, longer just stuff, and people get resistant at that point, right?
Even getting an engineer's approval on anything is another cost for the production. When you're doing an outdoor show, you mentioned that getting the engineer to look at the calculations and look at all the drawings and sign off on them is a non-negotiable. You have to get that done. Is there a time when you're doing an indoor show where you do want an engineer's analytical eye?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. All the time, or not all the time. That's a grandiose statement. Frequently, right?
Frequently.
You kind of,
Like
you
more
get
so
your.
than not. Or does it again depend on how close you get to reaching, getting to that max capacity or overstepping your design, your safety design factors for every component, including the building?
Super common for a tier 1 arena in the U.S. to say they have 100,000 pounds capacity. Just making up numbers. You roll through with 145, right? Spidey sense, red flags. Meet the building engineer. Sometimes it's non-negotiable for them, just through the nature of that. That's one way. The engineer. Oftentimes, this is where we're all different. We all have a different tolerance. I guess exposure is fancy kind of legal talk.
Mm-hmm.
Where you want a hand, where you want someone to look at it. It's not always just the bridles are distributing the force into the beams, right? What about this weirdo scenic piece, right? Snoopy. Here's 75-foot tall Snoopy. Did everybody really intend? That looks like balsa wood and like a drywall screw that you want me to choke to, right? You can evaluate the structural integrity of set pieces, your truss system and integrity, right? You could have someone fact check that, batch check if you're using all different tiers of truss, super mother, overriders, unders, all that. You can, or any kind of custom thing you've been to. Man, you just sort of over time work into a place. Again, we want a metric. Let's go 75% over the rated capacities of a place. You start to do that, you're gonna know, Siobhan, right? You're gonna the big LED wall. We were working with the Overwatch. It's a video game. We were working with their finals, and they were hanging like a 165-foot LED wall. So that's really wide, way up into the seats, upstaged in arena, and it always presented too much concentrated load. It was like 80% of the show's overall weight was this big LED wall. Wow. So then they go into venue liability for the future, and they're like, oh, our show was 170,000 pounds. We're just going to go find buildings that can support 175,000 pounds. But then you have to have the chat, but 80% of it is in this one plane or in this one line. So when you go to that building, then you're talking to the engineer. How do we spread this out? Super high steel, spreader beams, whatever, you got it in there. An intelligent discussion. Mr. Engineer, do you just want to lead the dance?
Or miss.
Or miss, 100%. Miriam Pashuta, is that the gal? Out of McLaren in New York. I would say in structural engineers these days, it might be 50-50. Gals to gentlemen.
Right. So when it comes to, how do I want to ask this question? When we take the ETCP certification tests, you're kind of expected to memorize certain numbers. You're expected to memorize the lifting capacity for different diameter cables, the safety factors for shackles, which by the way changes per manufacturer, right? I think that's kind of a silly thing to have to memorize when it depends on the manufacturer. Anyway, when you are taking the knowledge into the real world and you're doing this every day, what are some of the things that you personally have memorized?
Most of that stuff you just mentioned, I have fairly committed to memory. On my wallet here, I have the material breaking strength of shackles and turnbuckles. I carry it in my wallet. It's like 40 years old now.
So do you have it off the top of here, or do you just pull out your wallet?
Mostly both, a mix, right? I do not have every turnbuckle strength memorized, right? Wire rope,
just the
shackles.
More common ones that you use.
Yeah, all of. Okay, I don't want you to ask me all these things, so I'm trying not to clown myself now when I Sunday afternoon gibberish. I know the ranges of all these things, and I know when I'm in an overload capacity, like what is 3/8. Yeah. All of this stuff. You know the operational profile of the equipment that you're using so frequently that
Mm-hmm.
like I back when I was breaking in, the old time riggers just used to look at a situation and be like, oh, we want a 1 ton there. And you're like, well, I can look at that and think that's a 1 ton too, but we should document all this.
Mm-hmm.
I have most of that. Yeah, man, I don't want to get in a spot where I need to, you ask me the safe working load of something and I airball. But a lot of that stuff I have committed to memory. The bridle tension formula, I have at no time in my life other than to take the test, had that memorized. Like I will openly admit there. I do have a bridle app that we all have a bridle app on our phone, right? I'm a corporate boy, came from the local side, so calling bridles was one of the last golf clubs I put in my bag, right? As I started getting around, there was always a house guy. It wasn't until I ran, but lucky for me, I'm an information and learning seeker. So my whole journey, I was like, bridles, you got to get down with the bridles. Like that seems to be lesson one that my kind, like the corporate industrial guy, never touches. So my whole journey, I was paying attention, talking to people about that. So when it hit me, when the bad days come and the local guy melts down, the math is the math, and that stuff does work. I think the trick with calling bridles is you're walking in there first thing in the morning and your homework's going on the ground in big chalk and everybody's there to see it. And if you're off by 2 feet, you're off by 2 feet. And a lot of people, that's like you're in the light kind of moment. And I don't think everybody's as comfortable with that growing up. Hopefully, if you're not a jerk, the house guy's going to be like, bro, that one's missing by 2 feet. You want me to, yeah. And you're like, yeah, dude, I don't want to miss by 2 feet. Help me out. Sorry, there was a good Brent derail. What was the base question? I was off on a tangent.
The base question is, how much do you have memorized?
And I think I've proven my old dog nature here and said I have it. Back in the day, I had all that stuff memorized and was sharp as a tack. Before you have experience and just mileage under your belt, what you have is data. Like I would get fronted on so hard in my first time through building, so hard. I think we touched on Kelly Green in the LA Convention Center last time, right? Like his appraisal of pre-production was my gold standard that I worked towards. Like I saw him coming and I was waiting. And I would ask my friends and they're like, who are you? And I mean, I know who I am. Nobody else does. So why are they going to cut you any benefit of the doubt, right? So the data and that stuff, I don't think that's silly at all. I don't think, especially if you're trying to make this jump. Like I didn't know what an ellipsoidal, I didn't know what a Lico weighed when I leapt out, or a foot of truss as a local rigger. You're really not confronted with a lot of that stuff. So especially as you make the jump to the next thing, all that stuff's critical, right? I apologize. I have the weights of all that stuff in my worksheets now, right? How much the shackles weigh and all that, how much a cheeseburger weighs.
To me, it seems like if you can commit it to memory, fantastic. You're just that much faster at coming up with an answer. But if you don't commit something to memory, or you have a hard time memorizing an array of numbers or matching the correct numbers with each other, have a cheat sheet. You mentioned you've got something in your wallet. Like what do you think about cheat sheets of what common lighting devices weigh and video panels? What do you think of having a cheat sheet? Are you going to think someone is an amateur, an idiot? What do you think of that?
The exact opposite. I think cheat sheets are, I mean, so I'm not going to step back from the time you take that test. You need to have that stuff just rotely committed to memory, right? Because you're at that point in your journey. As you start to think about assemblies and the truss, the round slings, the shackle as an assembly, you need to have that info hardwired in there to know when things are bad, angles bad, all that stuff. You need to, at that point, then when you get past that, cheat sheets are just workflow pro tips, right? Like I would not hold that against the opposite. I think that's being a bit professional, right? Because as you get in the mix and start doing high volumes, you start looking for efficiencies. I used to have like a tab on my load sheet that I would just constantly update when new fixtures or new audio cabinets and stuff. And it just got too big. Stuff started updating quick enough that I quit doing it as a living document on my tab. We now just have a depository of all the PDFs. And when you do a job, you get a lighting plot from the lighting designer. They have a little legend that'll tell you the 6 fixtures or whatever, however many they're using on that job is. We go into our archive, we pull that data out, we can put it directly into the load sheet for those 6 fixtures. Or if it's something new, you go to the website, you get the PDF, you make sure you get the base level information to document. You put that in our now archive of all the things. And then in my active load worksheet, now I just have like the 6 fixtures they're using for that show or 3 fixtures or whatever. And you document it and put it there. And then we have an expansive catalog of everybody's stuff.
When it comes to problem solving on the jobs, at the job site, I know this title says complex problem solving skills, but we can take complex out of this equation for now, because my follow-up question to everything about memorization is when you are presented with a problem, you need to come up with a new solution. How much time do you spend just saying the answer, just presenting the new solution, versus going onto your app and maybe playing with that bridal calculator, or taking out a pen and paper and actually writing out an equation and figuring out that equation before moving on to the next solution? Does that question make sense? I can rephrase it.
How do you know you have the right answer? Is that what you're...
How much time, I think, how much time do you spend solving a problem, and what tools do you use? Yeah, that's my biggest question. What tools do you use for certain problems, and how much time does that take? I'm thinking in my head, if I've got to do some complicated bridal math, or if I've got to do some long form math, then it's going to take me a little more time than if I have an app and play with different scenarios.
As much time as you have is almost the real honest answer. I mean, we're slow right now. I have a show in a month, and I'm constantly thinking about it, right? I could have figured it out, the whole soup to nuts of it. I could have done it in an hour and a half, but you're constantly thinking. I mean, the more time you have, the more paranoid you get, right? Like, heaven help me when I get into a place where you think about the steel count. And if you have enough wire rope for all the downstingers, I'll make the Excel chart that is every shackle and every piece of steel for every connection on the show, right? Excel is a huge problem solving tool. As you're coming up in this world, I have never borrowed or stolen anyone else's document. I've seen great documents or some ones I like about something. People have given them to me. I will look at it and learn what that document is doing or how that document is thinking and learn how to do those things. I've never copy paste anything from a friend, colleague, or anyone that shared anything, because you want to learn. But at this point, now I can make a custom Excel document, and I'm not like any kind of Excel guru or ninja or anything, but I'm good enough with it that I can make custom docs contextually and situationally like that for a whole grid or a little problem or a big problem. Just kind of knowing your way around Excel is a huge tool. Having good friends and an open line of communication is a great tool. It's really hard, I found, when I was younger, to ask the older guys, because I was always embarrassed. Like, I should know this answer, right? I'm leaning on big dog. Is he judging me that I don't know? So you got to kind of moderate that. I think I was heavy on questions. I got told by a dear friend at some point, I didn't have my brother to ask questions. You might think I did, but I didn't, right? And they were saying, STFU, time to stand on your feet and pay more attention. If you want to be about it, be about it.
You think that culture has changed or is changing?
I think it has had to, because there's much more work now, and you got to onboard people quicker. Right? Like I have.
You should absolutely teach an Excel. With what we've talked about in this live stream, Brent, there have been multiple times where I thought, ooh, he can teach a webinar on that. Ooh, Brent should host a webinar on that. And the Excel and the whole Excel documentation thing and finding the answers like that quickly. I think that could be included in a webinar. Just, in case you were
I
looking
bet
for.
I bet 2 of the 3 people that would sign up for that are watching right now. So just hit me up and we can do like a screen share. I was doing that on Saturdays. I had some homies that were in a dark spot personally, and we just do an hour to talk about things, whatever, exactly that, Excel, CAD, all that stuff.
I want to pull up a couple of comments that we received. Bill said, many times I've had to go online to find the weight of the manufacturer, what they have for that product. It's a good quick check for any unknown gear. Absolutely. And this comment by Torleaf, I hope I pronounced that properly, probably not. I've seen cheat sheets being a replacement for knowledge and common sense. Not going to name the city, but the local riggers use a cheat sheet that tells them to use a stack chain on both bridle legs.
It's like a double cheat sheet.
It kind of sounds like, just because we say it's a cheat sheet as a replacement for knowledge and common sense, it sounds like we don't think of that city favorably. It sounds like by the way this comment is phrased, that this technique isn't seen as a favorable method for problem solving. So Brent,
I would love to
know like your thought on this comment.
So Torleaf, I don't know if you're still out of Orlando, brother. It's been a really long time, but what up? How are you? I hope you're well. So if you're making, like I just went on that little ramble a bit ago about how I've never copied anyone's Excel document. I'm a unique cat. And if you get a cheat sheet, if I hand my stuff to anybody and they just run with it, you're going to get called out. They're going to know it's not legit. The next people you're going to have to tinker with some cell in it that's going to be buried 13 operations in, and you're not going to, all of a sudden I've handed you a paperweight or something. Cheat sheets can't replace knowledge or common sense. That's why I said those breaking strengths you have to have rotely memorized at the beginning, and then as you old dog it, kind of. So that's really funny that a bridal cheat sheet uses deck chains on both sides. That would just make me laugh. Tough to fight against City Hall in that moment. Hope you have enough deck chains. It would seem like if you were going to the trouble of making a cheat sheet, you could try it with just a common leg and those things suck, but that's an instance like I think Siobhan might be alluding, where you're skipping the fundamental knowledge. You're skipping, you're cheating, and you're going to your big brother that has the last head rigger made this, and now when people come in, you're going to get chewed up, man. The road rigger knows you're not real, right? If you don't know how to critically think about the bridle, if you don't know what a link is, if it's 3 inches on the ground or 8 inches, that's non-optimal. Like I said, is business, as the number of gigs has exponentially increased, you have to fight with the army you have, right? Like, I'm not trying to call out any cities, but you go some places and the in-house provider is paying a number that you think that works for that local market, but it's not going to get you a killer. You're going to get the person that says yes to that, and then their boss hands them this cheat sheet. That's non-optimal. And if that person was open to learn, so here's a vibe. When I get on site, you're checking out the local crew. When you find those 1 or 2 people that are the bright ball people, those are the people I start fronting on. Hey man, what's that shackle good for? Hey dude, why do you do it like this? Not the head guy. If the head guy's open, then we're already having that chat through the whole workday. But as time goes on, you'll see the ones that have that question in their head, and those are the ones you start fronting on it. Why'd you do that way? They don't even know. It's because 2 other people told them to do it like that. But that can be an encouraging conversation. I mean, if it's all Walden and we're happy hippie, you want to help our brothers and sisters get coached up, right? A cheat sheet with 2 stack chains. Boy, I really hope I would know that before I got there to double the stack chains.
And that would make it a lot heavier too.
Sometimes that's just like a goofy house thing. In Philadelphia in the arena, they use 2 shackles on a split 15 at the connection. Sometimes there's just odd house things and you just run with it. The point's taken, Torleaf, that like a cheat sheet without the fundamental knowledge is properly cheating, right? It's not a work reference. It is a cheat or a hack. I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating efficiencies. Right.
Right.
I mean, you could conflate the 2 for sure, but
he mentions that this was many years ago, and we indeed ran out of chain.
Well, then
And he also
hopefully
says,
that
"What's up
dude
for
figured
everyone
out
in the
yeah,
city?"
I'm
Still
well,
out of
Torley.
Orlando. How you doing?
I'm
How you
well.
doing,
I'm just as hot
audience?
as you, but it's a dry heat here.
Oh, great. So, with we're at an hour and 12 minutes. So I encourage you guys to come up with your last minute questions and put them in the comments below so that we can get to them. Otherwise, I'm working towards wrapping this up. If you guys are a technical director, need it, have or you're working for one and you're looking for rigging services, Brent owns alpinerigging.com, and you know what he's capable of because we are talking to him right now and he's talking about workflow and efficiencies, and we love it. And he obviously has safety high on his mind. And if you're just now tuning in with us, go back to when we were talking about outdoor structures, anemometers, and high wind action plans, snowfall on buildings, all that good stuff. If you like what you see on Industry Explorers, we've got operational costs, and we're actually building an app for high school students. So if you want to contribute to that, buy us a virtual coffee for $3. It really helps out. If you found something insightful on today's show, please buy us a coffee. It's a small thing, but all the small things build up, and it really helps us out. So, going back to complex problem solving skills, Brent, you talked about workflow and efficiency. What other ways do you have efficiencies built into your workflow when it comes to solving complex problems at the job site? Heavy question.
Time horizons, right? The more complex it is, the sooner you have to get at it. That's just, I mean, you need some time to digest it properly when you're not stressed is the first thing, and think at it with like a lot of times something will happen on site and you get in the little huddle, two lighting guys and an audience, like everybody throwing out their solution to a rigging problem. I sort of hate that. I'm like, give me 90 seconds on my own and I'll come up with a course of action. I don't know what pops into your head, Siobhan, when you think about complex problem solving skills. That's kind of a subjective thing. When I think of complex problem solving, I think of rigging and working in the third world. It wasn't till the middle of my journey when we got to the third world, and that, I mean, I played in my early years, right before I was a proper production rigger, when I was just on the calls and stuff. I was close to the Kish rigging circle, so you see how they operate or how that gets down or how I perceived that was all getting down. Then you go off into your own and you have like this very narrow lane of travel. Then you get into more complex situations like that, and it is mind melting. How do you, again, experience is really the best teacher with all that stuff. You can't know what you don't know, like the stuff that goes on in this world. What do you do the first time you see a 200-foot wide, 80-foot tall LED wall with no burgers but with zip ties? What do you do? It's incredible how complex.
No.
And I mean, really, it's fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We have played the Bird's Nest in China, which is where they had the Olympics a long time ago, and you got into just some incredible politics dealing directly with the CCP. And if there's ever a situation where you just want to go, you're right, I'm wrong, it's when you're dealing with like people like that. But then man, this is what I love, this end of it. But you're really going to just take hard punches the first time. You can't see what you don't know. And then hopefully the second, third, fourth, fifth time, you can just whittle it down. Because everybody watching this podcast has like an open mind and loves rigging or like wants to know more. There are people like this everywhere in every country on every rig squad. It's more common in the US to meet people that aren't interested in what's going on and how to be better than it is out of the country. If you show up with some humility as an American, that's really well received because they're just used to us. I'm here with Kanye and we need all of you and we're going to yell or something like that. There are huge bridges to build with local operators everywhere. And that's not always my forte, but if I get through my chores, I'm really cool. and glad to bro down with everybody. But really, like in China and these things, you want to share, just like this talk we're having now. You want to share, you want to anticipate their questions and equip them to answer their questions. Figure out what's going on there, right? It's all different mazes to navigate and stuff.
Absolutely.
Complex problems are more personalities than technical.
Right? I was thinking that actually as you were giving your answer. I was thinking part of it is personalities and part of it is unforeseen circumstance or even unusual circumstance, such as having to deal with ticks and scorpions out in a literal field.
I showed up in Iceland for my most recent gig, and none of the riggers had ropes or harnesses, and said they were told not to bring her down. You want to talk about that? Was like heartbreaking, is what that was. You like, I'll show up.
It really, yeah,
it's heartbreaking. Well, let's grab some scissor lifts and see what we can do.
Oh boy. Well, Brent, thank you so much for giving your time with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for tuning in and watching another episode, a deep dive episode, part 2 of production rigging. We talked about a lot of topics. It was insightful. If you are interested, please check out Brent's website. It is alpinerigging.com. If you liked what you saw today or you liked something from a previous Industry Explorers episode, please buy us a coffee. It's $3 one time, and it helps towards our operational costs as well as the app that we are trying to build. It costs a lot of money. I don't even want to drop the numbers with you, but if you follow,
it was incredible. It was an incredible number she shared.
Yeah, it is. The more complicated the app gets, the more expensive it gets. Oh yeah, my background is in rigging, and I'm a rigger moving into the tech world, trying to build an app. It's a very interesting pivot for me. But no, it's very exciting. And if you follow Industry Explorers on social media, that's where we give updates where we haven't really talked about the fact that we're building an app and for what. But yeah, thank you, Bill. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for the questions, Bill. Yeah, man.
Please get well soon, recover soon. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Yeah, like I said, buy us a coffee. It really is gonna it really helps. Subscribe to Industry Explorers on YouTube for more videos. Send Industry Explorers or send myself, Siobhan Colleen, a DM. I'm more responsive on LinkedIn. And yeah, I love taking requests for future topics. So send those DMs, send us the money for the coffees so we can build an app. And until next time, Explorers,
stay kind, stay heads up as we all ramp up. Stay kind, stay heads up. It's gonna be action packed. Stay kind, stay heads up.
Off to the coffee shop. Yes, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Explorers. I'll see you guys on our next adventure. Take care, everybody.